All right, good morning, everybody. I don't even know what day it is anymore. everything's Sunday. So today we've got a fantastic topic and presenter, Claire Ferrandi. She's a food and beverage stylist. If you've ever taken pictures of food or cocktails or anything like that, and you've you know what goes in behind the scenes, you'll know how much value a stylist brings. From a photographer's point of view, I know how much value they bring, because whenever a client says to me, no, I can't afford the stylist, and then on the shoot, I have to be the stylist. It's not that simple. I mean, I can get by with the basics, but without a good stylist, your images are really not going to sing the way that they should. So I'm going to hand over to Claire. She's awesome. Please feel free to ask questions, etc. I'm looking forward to it. So Claire, over to you.
Thanks so much, Quentin, for the awesome introduction. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm really excited to be sharing some of the things I've learned over the years. And the slant I'm really taking is food styling for photographers. So today is for you, even if you don't see yourself wanting to become a food stylist, it's just useful to know things, I think, from a stylist's perspective. And I'm also going to show you some ways that you can expand your portfolio in this time of lockdown without a stylist, so you can really be productive. So I'm going to get straight into it. There we go. So on the agenda today, I'm going to speak about my world of food styling. I'm really going to introduce you to what goes into my days, how I approach things, my aesthetic, and how I like to work with photographers. And then I'm going to move on to some of my best food styling tips. Some things that are really simple, but I think that can elevate your work to the next level. And even if you, as a photographer, aren't doing the styling yourself, if you're working with a stylist, it is, I think, really cool to know some of the tricks. I know when I'm working with a photographer and I'm struggling with a shot or we're not quite getting there, it's really nice for a photographer to have some kind of understanding of the basics of food styling, and they can offer suggestions. This is totally a team sport, styling and photography. It goes hand in hand. So I hope that will help you as well. And then some things I'm excited to share as well, some simple tips on expanding your portfolio during lockdown. So in this period, we can't work together. Ordinarily, you'd be able to do a test shoot with a stylist, or just work together on a project. At this time, that's obviously not an option. So I'm going to share some ways that some things and like some really practical tips on how you can expand your portfolio, whether you're a novice or a pro and you want to add some new food and beverage things to your portfolio. And then also I'm going to offer some advice on how to be a better food photographer from the perspective of a stylist. So this isn't technical advice. It's not about lighting. It's not about kind of how to do things as a photographer. It's more sort of soft skills and things you can work on that I have noticed really make an amazing food photographer. So first I'm going to start with an introduction into my world of food styling and what goes into my days. So first, the thing I want to talk about first, and I always think this is so important for a business, why I do what I do. I think this is something also in this time we all need to think about. As photographers, as stylists, as any creative industry, and I think even if you're not in a creative industry, this is a really important thing to think about. For me, I'm a stylist and I do what I do because I am just obsessed with the idea, and I think it's so cool that we can create things from nothing. So bringing creative ideas to life, and for me, the thing of someone having something in their head as an idea and seeing it in their head, and then as a photographer and stylist team, you literally bring it to life and you go through all the motions, and the final result is a picture or a video that has basically been created from nothing. And for me, that is super exciting. And along with that comes the transformation that brands can have when amazing photography is brought to the table. And then the second part of why I do what I do is for client satisfaction. That is really what drives me. I get such a kick out of having happy clients and really like exceeding their expectations. It is something that pushes me all the time. You always want to kind of have, well, I always want to have the next client happier than the last. And I think that is also really closely linked to bringing creative ideas to life. If you can do that, you are going to have happy clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, also being a creative, the ability to see something in your head and know that you want it just like that, and the light must come from there, and whatever, it's in your head. But the moment you see it on the LCD or on the laptop, it's just the goosebumps just are there, and it's like, oh, and if the client is happy, then it's like even better. So that's amazing.
Totally. And how magical is that we get to do that we get to create things out of nothing, really. We get to bring ideas to life.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it.
So then the next thing I'm going to speak about, maybe you worked with a photographer, you've worked with a stylist before, or you haven't. And so if you have worked with a stylist before, of course you know what a food stylist does on shoots. But if you are focusing on a different genre of photography and food photography, and working with a stylist is something you would like to do, it's useful to know what stylist's role is on shoots. So my work really begins right from the beginning, when, as we were chatting about ideas, when a client has an idea, even if they don't have an idea, I am available right from the beginning to chat about their ideas, sift through all the options they want to consider, and really from there move to a focused kind of direction for the shoot. So I think it can be quite overwhelming for clients and anyone who is wanting to do a shoot, when there are just so many. You go onto Pinterest and there are so many ideas. You can, like, literally the world is your oyster, and it's a really important part of what I do is helping people concentrate on what the focus needs to be. Of course, we can't achieve everything in a shoot, but so that is something that I start with. And once we have a concept in mind, I will move on to pre-production. So that's really where my hard work starts. Of course, a lot of what I do is on set on the day, but a lot of my work happens behind the scenes and beforehand. So that is called pre-production. And once we have a creative direction kind of nailed down, I start sourcing props. And that can be anything from, I have a big collection of props that I source from my own collection. It can be going to the shops and buying a whole lot of things. It can be creating things if we need custom made items. That is something we do too, hiring. And my approach is I love to get things from all over. I love to mix old and new. I love to mix modern and sometimes rustic, depending on the concept. And I think it's really important to not just go to one place and get props. Of course, props can really complement what you do as a food stylist. It isn't only about the food. Then surfaces are also something really important for me. So that is something that you physically will put the plate on, or the glass on, or the burger on, whatever it is. So in sourcing surfaces, I either create them myself, I get them custom printed, I go to a tile store or source fabrics, depending on the brief. And this is also something you can really be creative on. You might see something like, I've got the most amazing wooden surfaces that have been thrown out in someone's rubbish, and you just have to keep your eyes open and you can find amazing things around. And then of course, so that will happen kind of a week or two before shoot, and then the day or a day before shoot, I will start getting ingredients and really planning things. We're making sure the shot list is achievable, and doing any food prep that I need to do beforehand. Mostly I like to cook things fresh on the day, but there are some things that you can prepare beforehand, so that's also an important part. And then, of course, on the day we arrive, unpack, and we do food styling on set. And so basically that is everything from selecting the plate that something's going to be served on, selecting the surface, working really closely with the photographer, and in a lot of senses, creative direction. I'm not a creative director or an art director, but as a food stylist, your role is also to guide the direction of the shoot, make sure that it is looking like the brief, and also there's some practicalities on the shoot you need to keep. I always like to make sure that we are on time, that things are running as they should, and that everyone's expectations are being met. So there are those roles too. So a frequently asked question, do I use fake food? The answer to this is yes and no. Generally, no. My understanding is that in kind of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was all about perfection. So back then, people used a lot of fake food. I also have been told, I'm not of the film era, but during film, when people were shooting on film, things took a lot longer. So food would have to sit in front of the camera for a lot longer. And then I think there was a need for using fake food. So I'm sure you've heard about all those stories of motor oil on chickens, and I don't know, I think there are like countless stories of bizarre things. So generally that's not really my style. I love things to look natural. I think that's the trend these days. And mostly I think it's what I do can be achieved with real food, and I believe the result actually looks better. But having said that, on occasion I will use fake things, and one of them is ice cream. So sometimes we'll shoot real ice cream, mostly not, obviously by the nature of ice cream, when it's sitting in front of hot studio lights, or even if you're not in a hot environment, it's obviously going to melt and you just don't have long enough with it. There are some tricks that you can extend the life of real ice cream, but generally the fake ice cream works really well. There are lots of ways that people make fake ice cream. The way I do it is by kind of making an icing consistency mixture from white margarine and icing sugar. So it actually is edible, but you wouldn't want to eat it. Okay, and then next up just to illustrate the fake ice cream that we make, the next slide is a video of a TV ad that I did, and it is fake, but I think it looks pretty good.
Just go slow, go slow, go slow, go slow.
So that's just an illustration that it doesn't look fake, it really looks realistic.
It looked real to me. Absolutely. So, I mean, the other option is obviously, working inside a walk-in refrigerator, but generally speaking, that would just be problematic all around. No one wants to be in freezing conditions, so a little bit of fake sometimes is necessary. Yes.
And of course, when we use fake food, it really needs to be, I am extremely cognizant of the fact that it needs to look incredibly realistic, and it needs to look true to the brand and the product that people will actually be getting. And then the second question that I'm really asked a lot is, who makes the food I style? So I think a lot of people, if you haven't worked with a stylist before, you kind of think that you sort of rock up on set and there's food there. It doesn't work like that. Generally, as I was explaining earlier, my team and I source and cook everything on set. I am a trained chef, so I'm really comfy in the kitchen. I am super hands-on. That's how I like to do things. And I would say 90% of the time, it is us making things. It gives us more control, and that's the way I like to do things. But in some cases, the client will supply the food. So for example, if you're doing a burger for a fast food chain, in the past, there's been a lot of controversy about things not looking like what you will get in the fast food restaurant. So in these instances, the client will typically supply all the ingredients and the stylist will cook and put them together. So there are some times when that is the case. And this next slide, this is something I did for Starbucks. So in this instance, they supply all the ingredients in components, and my role is putting everything together. So that will be slicing the baguette, slicing the tomatoes, cooking the bacon, mixing the mayo, all in the proportions that they would do, but we just elevate everything.
Absolutely. And I mean, things like slicing the baguette or the burger bun, etc. The way that they would normally do it, they would slice it and put it in and toast it or whatever. But you can't have 4 centimeters of burger on the top and 2 at the bottom of the bun. It needs to be equal. You also can't have more bun than burger. So those sorts of things are really important, and that's a vital part for me when shooting food, is to have someone who has a good understanding of how all of that fits together and can put that together. Because a lot of the times, if it is a restaurant or something like that, the chef will want to do it. But I mean, as an example, if you have a wrap, they'll make this beautiful wrap and then they'll cut it in half and then they'll position it, and everything is just smooth and cut. There's no juicy tomato or this or that, and you kind of go, no, hold on.
Mushed and
exactly. So yeah, that's absolutely the case. They can supply the ingredients, etc., as they normally would, but it really takes skill to put it together so that it looks amazing.
Mm-hmm. That really is a good point about restaurants, I think, in particular. Often restaurants think, oh, they have a chef and they have an amazing chef. They can just present the food as they do normally. And the reality is that presenting food in a restaurant where time is of the essence, it's very different from presenting food for camera. So I think the most important thing is that a stylist really brings their skills of knowing how the camera will react to certain foods and placing things in a way that looks natural, but also considered. So this is also something else I did for Starbucks, and it was the same situation here. The salad greens, for example, that's the exact quantity you would get when you order the salad. Same thing with the sandwich. Everything is just elevated and placed, and there are a few tricks just to keep things in place, but generally it's the real deal. So next, I'm going to speak about some of my favorite tips that I have learned over the years. And as I said at the beginning of the presentation, these I think are important even if you have no aspirations to be a food stylist. If you are shooting food, it's really cool to know some tips, so you can help the stylist, or if you feel something isn't working in a shot, you can offer a tip. And as you practice, you will learn what tips you like best. And I think everyone has different ways of doing things, but these are some of my faves. Excuse me. So my first tip is consider color and texture. And for me, this comes down to the planning as well, right from when you are chatting to your client and you're in the pre-production phase. If you can, select things with color, with ingredients with color, select surfaces that have color, props and plates that have color. And when I say color, it doesn't necessarily have to be bright and colorful. I just think that color should really be considered. And this goes, as I say, right from the pre-production phase to styling on set. And as I say here, brown ingredients in dishes can be difficult to style. So if you are wanting to try some styling yourself, I wouldn't suggest starting with something like a Melba pudding or a banana bread or a roast. For me, those are difficult things to style, and of course they have their place and they are what they are, but it's much easier, and I think you'll have to work less hard to get an amazing product with bright, bountiful, beautiful ingredients. And when I talk about texture, I love bringing in textures in backgrounds. I think that's really important. Textures in plates, And for me, this means looking for props and surfaces in places that are not usual. So don't just go to one place for your plates and things, and try and get things that are handmade, that have a little bit more texture, some character. I really think that comes through in images, and obviously the light plays off these kind of textures much better than it would on something that's just flat and shiny. Of course, flat and shiny can be amazing and it totally has its place, but if you're starting out, I think it's cool to play with textures. And then my favorite tip on softening an image. So sometimes you'll put an image together, you'll style something, put it together, and it just feels like something's missing. It needs a kind of a homely element, something softer. A beautiful piece of cloth is always something that really adds to an image, I feel. So that can just be like bringing in a cloth on the side. You don't have to iron it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfectly folded, just a corner somewhere, or if you want to bring it in more under a plate, that really is something that brings an image to life. And so here is some of my work where I believe I brought in color, and I was very purposeful in selecting ingredients that I knew would be colorful. So the first image, it is a salad, and I remember when I pitched the idea, I really was keeping in mind that I wanted the ingredients to be bright. It was going to be on a neutral background, neutral board, but the ingredients are bright, pop of yellow, pop of purple from the red onions, just really brings something to the image. And then the second image, you'll see here everything is mostly brown, and that, as I said, is really cool as well. That can work, but I've tried to bring in some texture in the gold background, some green, the like brightness and vibrancy of the yellow also really adds something to the image. And then the third image, for me, this really feels like a good example of using bountiful, bright produce, if you can. And here it's kind of like every hue of the rainbow, and I love that kind of look. So my second tip is bring images to life with movement. So if appropriate, adding a drip or a drizzle, like a drizzle of honey or a drizzle of sauce, really can bring an image to life. But I think something to be considered here as well is it needs to be the right amount. If it's a stack of pancakes, for example, you don't want to drown it in honey. And there's also a little window. You have to be quite quick on this. There's kind of if you can have two people there, if you're shooting on your own, you don't want to kind of drown the pancakes in honey and have them floating in the plate of honey. You want it to be like really considered and natural looking.
And also, if you want that drip to be on the end of the second pancake, of a set of 5, you need to be ready to go, and hopefully it's not going too quickly so you can grab another one. And as you say, that timing has to be spot on, because once you've poured that and it's right down at the bottom, well, I mean, essentially you can try and turn all of that around, and it's simple if it's a stack of pancakes, but if it's something else that's got, it going all over, you can't just turn it around and use the back anymore, so you've got to be, everything's got to be there ready to go. And right, everyone ready?
Yes, and like check your equipment. I've had so many times, often it happens on set, everyone's ready and the equipment's working fine. All of a sudden I'm doing a drizzle and everything's perfect, and oh no, the flash isn't going, camera's frozen or whatever. So there's like time is on the essence in those kind of shots, but they are usually worth it. It is definitely worth the stress. It really just brings images to life. Then another way that I love bringing things to life is with a human element. So for example, we could be using the example of honey, using a honey or a spoon or a honey dripper, and showing the hand in an image can be really beautiful. Another idea to bring an image to life if it's feeling a little bit stale is to have a hand dipping in with a fork, or someone holding a plate of food. That can also really transform an image. And here are some examples. So the first image is chocolate sauce dripping over a stack of pancakes. That image is definitely an example of sort of time being of the essence. So I was kind of above, dripping the chocolate sauce, and the photographer was obviously shooting as quickly as possible. But I don't have a picture of the before, but just seeing the before and after, it's chalk and cheese. The chocolate sauce really just brings it to life. And then the second image is a really, really simple image, but I just love the lifestyle element. It makes it really relatable for people. I mean, it's literally just a simple loaf of bread, but feeling a person in the background is very cool. And then the third image as well, I think the lights definitely do something to bring the image, to bring it to life. So that's also something you can play around with, especially at Christmas time. That's a very cool thing to do, especially like playing through liquids. In the back, you can see we have some champagne glasses, and also, of course, the glossy chocolate on top, dripping down. It looks like it's actually just caught the action, which I love. And then here is another example of simple food. This is just braai food, but I feel the image really comes to life with the hands and people chatting and laughing. It feels like you could be in the image. So I think that's a cool thing to consider too. And then tip number 3 would be to keep practicalities of a shoot in mind. This is really, really important. Of course, it's wonderful to be ambitious, and we all want to push ourselves and challenge ourselves. But if the reality is you are shooting somewhere where there isn't a kitchen, don't decide to do 5 roasts, and that sounds crazy, but people do try and do that kind of thing. And like if your client is really budget constrained, you also need to consider that. But you also need to put together a shot list that is realistic. So don't expect to do 20 roasts in a day. It's just not possible. Well, it is possible, but it's going to look like you have done that. And then, of course, it's also seasonality of ingredients. So don't pitch something to a client that doesn't have the budget to fly something in from overseas when you can't get it in Joburg or wherever you are shooting. So, and then also, I think on this point is if you aren't confident you can achieve a shot, don't pitch it to your client. These kind of shots, this is when you should be testing with people, trying things out, and only pitch things that you really know you can do. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with pitching something you know is of your level and then just executing it beautifully. I mean, I think there's so much to be said for that, while also in your own time trying to push for achieving more complicated things.
I've got a question just on the what's practical, etc. I know that certain stylists will have a certain number of shots that they'll do on a day, and others will have more. And I think it varies based on the stylist and also based on what it is that you're shooting. What is your take on that with regards how many dishes per day?
So that's a really good question, because as you say, it depends so much. So typically my sort of standard number is between 5 and 10 in a day. But that is, with that amount of shots, you don't have time to be agonizing over every little thing, over every little grain of salt. So if you're shooting a billboard for a really fussy client, that's way too much. You might want to do 1 or 2 shots in a day. It also depends on the technicality of the shot. If you're shooting beer bottles, and the photographer's going to need a lot of time to perfect things, maybe 1 or 2 in a day is what you can achieve. But if it's a smaller client and they really just want to get volumes out of the shoot and you want to give them as much value as possible, I would say 10 shots in a day is doable, sometimes more. It also depends on the complexity of the food. Like if you're doing baked goods, I would say absolute maximum is 10 in a day. But if you're in a restaurant where they just want a lot of beautiful social media content, you might be able to get away with 15 shots in a day. And I also think it actually comes down to the client at the end of the day. So you have to kind of suss them out. If they haven't done shoots before and they just want they want lots of content, then you can try and go for more. And something that I like doing is sitting with my clients and working out a priority list. So I can say, this is the most important, and we want to get this out of the day. If we have time, let's move on to these things. And that kind of sets the expectation that hopefully we'll get more, and usually we do end up getting more, but you never know what's going to happen. You know, sometimes people change their minds on set, they aren't happy with something, and you need to be able to, it's really important for me that I can give people what I've promised.
Absolutely. And I think the other important thing from a photographer point of view is that a lot of clients, I mean, we're really lucky if we have a client that's done it before and they've got the budget, etc. But for a lot of photographers, their food photography clients, it'll be their first time they've had their food properly shot. And it's our role as photographers to educate them on what it is that they're going to get, you know, explain bulk versus, quality and the value, etc. And I think that's really, really important. But also, you were saying it depends on the type of food. If you've got something that's like let's say, for example, a custard, where you make it and there's a limited amount of shelf life that it has before it just goes, and then you need to scrap it and do it again. And that's important for the client to understand that they can't just prep 5 dishes and have them sitting on a shelf or on the pass and then bring them as you finish, because by the time that you get to the 4th one, and let's say it's eggs, there's going to be a film over it, and it's just not going to have the same feel. So you need to be educating your client before the shoot in the pre-prods to make sure that they are aware of it, and everyone is on board with what's going on. If things change on the day, different story, then it's like each for their own type of thing. But yeah, exactly. Then you just make the best plan possible and be as professional as possible. But it's important that beforehand with the pre-prods and get this food stylist in as well, because that's critically important. But just make sure that you educate your client and go through those processes so that the day runs smoothly.
Definitely. And I also just think, Quentin, to that point, it's also important to be really nimble on shoots and change the plan if necessary. Speak to, if you are working in a restaurant and the chef is, as you mentioned, preparing 5 dishes at once, you need to speak to them and say, we come and look here, this is how we do it. So I will tell you when you need to prepare something, and take it from there. So I think that's also communication on shoots and changing the plan if necessary is really a big part of what we do as well. So then my 4th tip, and I believe this is important for anyone in the creative industry, is trust your instincts, trust your gut. When you're working on a shot and it doesn't feel right, if something is bothering you, something's bothering me about a shot, but I'm not quite sure what it is. It's almost like there's a different, I don't know, the science behind it, there's like a different part of your brain that it just doesn't feel quite right. And I really think you kind of need to lean into that. And that's something that you should nurture and develop, that approach to your work, playing around with things, playing around with the shot, and only kind of moving on when you are happy. And I think at the beginning, when you start doing this, I think it's something that if you've been shooting for a long time or styling for a long time, it's sort of really part of you and part of how you do things. But if you are just starting out, there's a little voice in your head, and it's really quiet, and it's difficult to kind of tune into. But you kind of always need to listen to that voice, and as you continue and get more experience, it becomes louder, and you become kind of sure of what is not working. But this is something I really, really believe in. And it's the same, I suppose, in business. You need to trust your instincts. If you have a bad feeling about a client, if you see some red flags, you should probably listen to those things. It's I think the same also in life, I guess.
You might also find that either the client or the photographer has got something niggling as well, but they're not sure if they should say anything. And so it may very well be that you are the only one and you're freaking out for nothing, but it may be something that other people are considering. And if everyone's engaged, you can then improve the shot for sure.
Definitely. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is, this is what I'm quite excited to put to photographers, is how to improve your photography skills and add some things to your portfolio in this time of lockdown, when you obviously can't work with a stylist. So I hear you and I see you if you are sitting on the couch and you kind of want to get productive. Now really is the time. You might as well. I'm sure you have all your equipment, and you probably have ingredients in your cupboard or in your fridge that you can use to make beautiful food shots. And if not, next time you do your groceries, just pop out and get a few extra things. So I am going to show you how to do some really simple, simply styled shots that I think really will add a wow factor to your portfolio. And an important thing for me is things don't have to be complicated. You can do amazing, beautiful work, really showcasing your skills using simple ingredients and simple ideas.
I can hear everyone pulling their chairs closer.
You might as well. Now's the time to play around.
Absolutely.
You don't have clients hanging around, like you don't have a million emails in your inbox. Just use the time to try something out. And if you hate what you produce, that's cool too. I'm sure you'll learn something and try something the next day, or try and look at things in a different way. So, as I said, I think the most important thing here is to just keep it simple. Now is not the time to add if you are unsure about, if you've never dabbled in food styling before, it's not the time to style a huge stacked up burger or a stack of pancakes or a big cake or a milkshake. Just keep it really, really simple. And so the next slides are some practical ideas to practice on. So my first idea is drips and swirls. So the first image, these are both images I did. The first one is honey on a white surface. And the way we did this is we had the camera set up overhead. I had a board and I dripped the honey. And then I laid it down and below the camera, and we shot it. So it took a few some trial and error, but I think this is something you can totally achieve at home. And I'm not suggesting do honey as well. You could do caramel sauce. You could do syrup. You could do it on a different background. It might be really, I'm just thinking now it could be interesting to do it on a black background and getting the shine of an ingredient. Like chocolate sauce dripping down would be amazing too. Some things to think about. You probably even have a bottle of chocolate sauce in your pantry, and you might as well play around with it.
Listen, I think with this lockdown, no one's going to have a bottle of chocolate sauce in the back of whatever now.
That's true.
Whatever luxury supplies you had are gone.
You eat them. Anything sweet and delicious. What else is there to do these days but eat and drink?
That's it.
And in the second image is I made a chocolate ganache, and this was a case of we put it in a Tupperware, or you could put it on a baking tray or something like that. You need to make quite a big volume here, and I just swirled through it, and we kind of just shot until we got what we liked. So here, I'm also not suggesting you don't have to do chocolate. You could do treat caramel that you whisk until it's smooth, and swirling a spoon through it could be beautiful. Like, think about the light you can get on there, some shine would be amazing. Another thing you could do a similar shot with is yogurt. I'm sure you have some thick yogurt in your fridge or some sour cream. And I suppose this would be also a good opportunity to play around with light, different techniques, and try some new things. Icing, cake batter would also work brilliantly for these kind of things. And try and get kind of bang for your buck in these shots. You could try shots like this, then you could try with a whisk in, you could try with a hand, and see what you like most in the end. Okay, then the second idea is ingredient close-ups. So here you just get some extra ingredients and really shoot them close up. You don't need a stylist. If you have a nice background, use it. But if you don't have a background, really like the melee shot, just get close up in the corn, and you play around with editing afterwards.
Didn't you style the corn in there so that each of the colors are in the right place?
No. And then some other ideas I had, halved tomato. I think that could be beautiful, getting really close up inside a tomato, whether you see the background around it or not. I think that could be cool. Beetroot, whole or halved, radishes also would be beautiful. The surface filled with coffee beans, literally just like scattered all over the surface, playing with light on that. And then also halved citrus, so that could be getting really close up in a single half, or filling a screen with masses of citrus. That could also be something beautiful to shoot. And then my third idea is drinks. So often I work on shoots with drinks, but I think in this time you can definitely get some beautiful shots without a stylist. So the first shot, it isn't a shot of mine, but I thought it could be something cool to play around with. So that's literally just getting a glass of milk and dropping something into it. You could do it with any liquid really. The second shot, something close up, even if it's just a plain, kind of getting a close up on a glass with bubbles in it. And so that could be sparkling water. You could use something like non-alcoholic champagne, so we can't buy alcohol at the moment in South Africa, or anything really. I mean, grape ties, it could look beautiful. And then the third shot, just really playing around with shadows and filling glasses to different levels and using different backgrounds, and also playing with editing there. And then my fourth idea, this is also really simple. I showed you the first picture, the picture on the left earlier in the presentation, but you could just get a beautiful loaf of bread, or if you are into baking, bake a loaf of bread, but that's not necessary, and get someone in your house to hold it, maybe bring in a different apron in the background, and there are many different ideas you can do in this vein. And then the image on the right, also just holding a glass. And I think these images are really impactful, but so incredibly simple and so achievable. And then my fifth idea is styling with cups. So this obviously requires that you have some things at home, but it could just be things in your kitchen, and playing around with them, maybe bringing in a food element and ingredient, but it's not necessary. You could, the image on the right-hand side would be equally impactful without the citrus, just a whole lot of pots. And I think you can get really creative in a shot like this. You can find some quirky things around your house and play around. And then some tips from the perspective of a stylist to become a better food photographer. And this is not technical things. I am not a photographer. I can't talk about those things. But these are things that make me want to work with a photographer, and that I've noticed make photographers better. So I think it's important when you're a food photographer, you really need to get comfortable with working as a team. So you'll probably be working with a stylist most of the time, and it is different from shooting something like wildlife or other genres where you're kind of on your own. It's a 50-50 thing. You're working on the shots together. You need to get comfortable that you're probably going to have clients standing behind you. They're part of the team. That's something you need to really think about, and that's a skill I think it's important for everyone to continually try to become better at. I know it's something that I am always trying to better myself at. And then practice shooting in high pressure situations. So as we discussed a little bit earlier, Quentin, about when they drips and drizzles and things, you need to, like, time is of the essence. You need to be okay with that. And also when there are clients hanging around you, they're going to be standing behind you, they're going to be asking questions, they're going to be asking about your lights, and you might be trying to concentrate on the shot, but it's important to kind of still be professional and engage with everyone. And then I think this for me is important as a stylist, is learn about food and start cooking. You don't need to become a chef, you don't need to have like some crazy knowledge, but I think it's important if you're shooting food, you should have an interest in food and learn about food, know about food, understand why a stylist might be doing something, and I think it'll make your work better, because you will understand that something should be shiny in this scenario, but it shouldn't be in that scenario. And that's not a hard thing to do. Just start cooking supper more, watch some videos, eat out at different restaurants, kind of use food as your inspiration. And then another thing I think is super important, this is for stylists, photographers, any creative industry, is to have your finger on the pulse. So keep up with what is happening in current events, in decor, in editing, and like just world trends, like the current climate. Obviously at the moment, you know, the climate's very different from what it was a few months ago. That's going to affect the trends going forward when we all go back to work. And these are things we need to consider. So on this, on the kind of topic of trends, it's important to be on social media, to check out what's happening on Instagram, to look for inspiration on Pinterest, to look at books, to kind of get out into the world and see what the decor trends are, look at books and get inspired in that way. I think it's our job to educate our clients and make sure what we do is up to date. And I think that's really what can set you apart as an amazing food photographer. Also on this note, I love it when I see food photographers kind of experimenting with different lighting techniques or different editing techniques, things that might be like breaking the rules a little bit, a more kind of looser look. I think that's also something fun to experiment with, not to just have one way of doing things, to kind of expand how you do things and also to play around. And I think that really ties into trends. And then I also think it's important, as it is for stylists, for food photographers to diversify their skills. And on that front, that means not doing things the same way all the time. So having a certain style, of course, that's why people hire a certain person. It's because they bring a certain style to the table. But I think it's important to be able to do almost anything that someone asks for. You know, they might ask for a style that you actually don't really like, or you are a bit unsure about. I think it's important to be able to cater to those requests. And that's it for today. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Please reach out with any questions. I would really love to engage and answer anything. And if you do create anything from my tips, I would love to see. Please share them any way you like.
Woo-wee. That was fantastic. I think there's a lot of really helpful advice there for you know, people that are just going to be playing around at home, and even for photographers. So I do have a couple of questions here. I'm just going to go back through them to find it. Sorry, it was right here. Sorry, I was prepared, but then I was not. So Robin Rolf Wood says, how do you cope with power outages and also baking goods in different ovens, as each one will have different results in terms of time and the perfect, you know, cake or bread, you know, within that time?
Okay, so the first part of question, power outages, that's difficult. I think the most important thing is planning. If you can, get a generator, get some kind of alternative power supply. I really believe in South Africa, like if we're going to carry on doing business as we want to, you kind of just have to level up. And I know that's a sad reality, but we can't just make excuses. We can't put off shoots. The show needs to go on, especially on shoots, because so many people are there. So you need to look and see what the schedule is looking like the next day. If necessary, get a gas bottle, adapt what you are doing to be able to make things on gas, do all your baked things the day before. For photographers, I know there are options with batteries and things, or shoot natural light. I just think you just need to be resourceful and kind of make a plan, and not panic about it. And it's important for me that the show needs to go on. And then what was this? Remind me of the second part. That is a different ovens.
Yes, that's right.
So different ovens. I think the most important thing is, well, I suppose you could get an oven thermometer and take that with you in your kit. That might help you. I don't do that. I just like to keep an eye on what is in the oven. I try to use all my senses when I'm cooking, and I think that's an important skill as well to develop as a stylist, because you might be in studio sometimes, but if you're doing things like TV ads, you're going to be in a funny oven on the corner of a road somewhere, or you're going to have to fry things or make a pan. And I think it's just important to be adaptable and I think cook with your eyes and your ears, and if it looks done, it probably is.
Absolutely, and you know, just in keeping with that, preparation is extremely important. You know, if you know that you're going to have to braai this particular element of the dish, you know, you need to be you know, testing that out. If you're going to be, if the client says we need a certain look, so something we want to focus on a particular part of the dish and the rest can kind of you know, fade out of focus, you need to do some tests and plan and whatever, you know, because that's obviously what their specific requirement is. It just is the way that it is. And as you say, South Africa at the moment, with the electricity side of things, same thing. You know, if you need battery power, if you need power for your lights as a photographer, make sure that the place that you're going to be shooting has got those you know, backup power. If it doesn't, make a plan. You know, hire some batteries, you know, battery powered lights, etc. So that preparation is critically important. I'm just want to see if there's something else here. Yeah, Hamish is just saying, you know, just be resourceful, be willing to think out of the box, and be resilient. And I think that from a photographer's point of view, like a skill set point of view, is being able to adapt quickly. You know, if something goes wrong, make a plan, you know.
And it will go wrong. It always goes wrong. There's always something, every single shoot, it never goes perfectly according to plan, but you kind of learn to expect that. And that's part of what we do. We troubleshooting on set all the time. And I think that's a huge part of what we do.
Absolutely. It's a very big skill to have. And you know what, it's not just with food photography, it's every, you know, photographic genre that has an other person in it, and other person may be a client, or it may be a model, or the client is sitting over your shoulder, and you know, sometimes that when things get a little frenetic, you need to, you know, be calm in that situation, or appear calm, while in the background you're freaking out and trying to solve problems. So that is seriously a good skill. So Curtis Gallen is he's going to be doing a talk soon. I have tied him down to a date. He needs to send me his promo stuff. But so he's going to be giving us from a photographic perspective, you know, the way that he would approach it. So lighting, you know, composition, etc. So I think it's going to be a fantastic dovetail with yours. He said to me, when is Claire doing hers? And he said, okay, I want to do it afterwards, just so that I know. So he wanted a bit of prep. Hopefully he dovetails really nicely with yours. So it doesn't look like there's any other questions here that we haven't covered. So what I would just like to say is, if you can afterwards, there might be some questions on the Facebook group, maybe just answer as and when. But seriously, a huge thank you to you. You've been such a star. Thank you for coming on and giving us this insight and you know, your advice. And I think what we should do is definitely those ideas that you had. So we need to do some you know, challenges here. I think out of those 5, so we've got the drips you know, on surfaces. We've got the milk with something dropping into it. Low light, you know, with the light coming from the side, and the glasses with the shadows, a bit of human element, and then some styling props. I think everyone should try at least one of those, put up the pictures, and then Claire can give you some guidance as to, you know, what really worked well with that, and what you could have tried for the next one. I think that'd be awesome.
Awesome. I'd love to see that.
Cool. All right. Well then, yeah. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And yeah, can't wait to see what everyone produces on the group. Thanks, Claire. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Quentin, for arranging. Bye.
It's a pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.